Imagine a world where good is achieved through evil, where salvation demands transgression. This was the revolutionary, shocking heart of Jacob Frank's doctrine. In the last episode, we saw Jacob Frank declare himself the spiritual heir to Sabbatai Zevi, gathering a devoted following with promises of a new order. But the core of his message, the truly revolutionary and scandalous heart of his doctrine, was something far more radical than just messianic claims. It was an ideology that turned morality on its head. Imagine a world where good is achieved through evil, where salvation demands transgression. This was the revolutionary, shocking heart of Jacob Frank's doctrine, a path he called holy through sin. It was an idea designed not just to challenge, but to utterly shatter the spiritual foundations of his time. To understand this audacious concept, we must delve back into the esoteric fringes of Sabbatean theology. After Sabbatai Zevi's shocking conversion to Islam, his followers were left reeling. How could the Messiah, the Redeemer of Israel, abandon his faith? Frank and other radical Sabbateans provided an answer. Zevi's apostasy wasn't a failure, but a necessary, mystical act. They believed that divine sparks of holiness had fallen into the klipot, or shells of evil, within the mundane world. For these sparks to be redeemed and ultimate salvation achieved, the Messiah himself had to descend into the very depths of evil, to immerse himself in transgression, to gather these scattered fragments of holiness. Frank taught that this was Zevi's true mission, and now it was his mission to complete. Furthermore, for the redemption to be total, Frank's followers were also compelled to emulate this messianic descent, to walk the path of transgression in order to break the power of the shells. This paradoxical principle became known as mitzvah haba b'avera, a commandment fulfilled through a transgression. For Frank, the existing world order, governed by traditional law, was tuna, was intrinsically flawed, a barrier to true redemption. To bring about the new messianic age, the old laws had to be deliberately, systematically broken. This was not about wanton sin for its own sake, but about mystical antinomianism, the belief that by consciously transgressing, they were shattering the old corrupt corral, spiritual structures, and paving the way for a new, purer reality. Frankists reportedly engaged in a range of practices considered utterly taboo in traditional Judaism: sexual transgression, the rejection of dietary laws, the desecration of the Sabbath, even the consumption of non-kosher wine. These acts, to their minds, were not sins, but sacred rituals, deliberate steps in a cosmic drama to hasten the messianic coming. At the center of this audacious theology was Jacob Frank himself. He was not merely a teacher of this doctrine, he was its living embodiment, its ultimate interpreter. Frank positioned himself as the Holy One, the Lord, the very source of life for his followers. They believed he contained within him the spiritual essence of all previous messiahs and prophets. Their actions, their transgressions, gained meaning only through their absolute devotion to him. He demanded unquestioning obedience, declaring that salvation could only be attained by clinging to him. For Frankists, he was the path, the living revelation of divine will in a world poised for radical transformation. To doubt him, to question his commands, was to fall back into the old religion and risk spiritual damnation. This doctrine of holy through sin was a direct, head-on assault against the very bedrock of traditional Judaism, halakha, or Jewish law. For centuries, halakha had provided the framework for Jewish life, dictating ethical conduct, ritual observance, and communal structure. It was seen as the divinely ordained path to holiness, a meticulous system designed to uplift and sanctify. Frank's teachings inverted this entirely. Where halakha demanded adherence, Frankism demanded transgression. Where halakha emphasized separation from the impure, Frankism called for immersion. To traditional rabbis, this was not just heresy, it was utter blasphemy. It undermined divine command, invited moral chaos, and threatened to unravel the entire fabric of Jewish identity. To sanction transgression as a path to holiness was perhaps the most scandalous proposition ever uttered within Jewish thought. Yet, despite its shocking nature, Frank's ideology offered a powerful, intoxicating promise. For those disillusioned with the perceived rigidities of rabbinic law, for those yearning for a more direct spiritual experience, this doctrine offered liberation. It was a path that promised radical transformation, a personal and communal recreation. It offered freedom from the perceived spiritual constraints of the past and a direct, albeit perilous, route to a new messianic order. To Frank's followers, they were the enlightened few, chosen to accelerate redemption by bravely entering forbidden realms. But such blasphemous teachings, such a direct assault on millennia of tradition, could not go unanswered. The whispers of Frank's radical antinomianism spread like wildfire, reaching the ears of the rabbinic establishment. This was no longer just about a charismatic preacher. It was about an existential threat to Judaism itself. The rabbinic world was mobilizing, preparing to confront this challenge head-on. Join us next time, as the stage is set for an epic confrontation, the public disputations that would pit Jacob Frank against the might of traditional rabbinic authority. It was a fight for the very soul of Judaism.